Thank you. Do we have questions from the audience? It's your turn. You'll have to, right here, Kathy, in the very back, behind you. Sneaky.
Thank you. Having worked in commercial lending, I know the rate of failures of new businesses is much higher than being successful. I wondered if they've tracked any of these companies that have been formed by immigrants and what their rate of success is.
I don't know that data off the top of my head. It is true that immigrants tend to, with the American work skill level or education level, it's kind of a bell curve to some extent. So you have a lot of people with high school degrees, some college or a 4-year degree, and the immigrants have the ends of that curve. They have a lot of people with no high school education and a lot of people with advanced degrees, so it tends to be a flatter curve. And so particularly on the less educated end, we call it sometimes entrepreneurship by necessity. So you have a lot of self-employed people that frankly have a hard time getting hired, and so they work in landscaping, they work in construction, they work in service industry jobs, but they're self-employed, and so they show up in those numbers as entrepreneurs. I can tell you that there are lots of correlations between wealth, between new economy jobs, between tech jobs that suggest, at least in the tech economy, immigrant-owned firms are highly successful and are likely, just based on the research, more successful than the native-born folks. And you can look at whether it's 25% of those venture capital-backed firms going public. What that means is, lots of venture capital goes, but the ones that go public are the only ones that are making money. And when immigrants make up 12.5% of the population and produce 25% of the public venture capital-backed firms going public, that suggests that they are producing a lot of the successful ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the director of the Refugee Resettlement Program here in Lansing at St. Vincent Catholic Charities. And I'm sure you know that we do resettle a lot of refugees who are very talented, who are coming mid-career as doctors, engineers, all kinds of education. And we've been working with Upwardly Global and some other organizations to help get people recertified and get their education to a place where they can get jobs in their careers. But it's still a challenge, and I'm wondering if there's, I have two questions. First of all, if there's ever been consideration to providing incentives to employers to hire immigrants and refugees in those fields, because a lot of employers are reluctant to hire somebody who's middle-aged with no contactable references, because they've come here and maybe they have a brand new certificate from somewhere, but really nothing else showing their talents. And then the other question is it possible to get other people besides students involved in the Go Employer program?
I'll answer both and then you can jump in. So in terms of, we've been very careful not to design programs with special incentives. We don't want to, we understand the political backlash there would be, but B, it's not, in our mind, it's not that immigrants and refugees necessarily need special preference or anything like that, but they need an equal playing field. And that's why, really for us, a lot of it is employer education. How to look at an international resume or how to deal with somebody who's struggling with English as a second language. There are a variety of models that focus on working class immigrants who don't come with high advanced degrees, and some of the refugees that are harder to place. One is the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians that uses their workforce dollars to redesign kind of the job training programs to make sense for international folks. And so there are answers out there. We haven't pursued the provide a special incentive to do something. It's been a lot more focused on employer education to the opportunity. And what often has happened is that those folks tend to be very loyal, very hardworking, all that kind of stuff. In terms of your second question was about access to employers beyond GTRI for the Go employers. GTRI partners with a lot of different folks. In fact, it's probably the hardest part of what we do. We don't have a hard time being attractive to international students. We have a hard time getting employers who are willing. We have I think 55 employers or more signed up as Go employers. And again, they're just willing to consider international students on an equal footing. we're all partnering with MEDC's Dream Job Summit on June 13th at Ford Field. That is for skilled talent. From our perspective, it's not calibrated to help international folks, and that the kind of employer education that we think is really important to these employers who have said to the state, I can't fill my skilled needs. I need IT, I need engineers, I need, the Business Leaders for Michigan just launched a global engineering village effort to deal with the engineering problems. Yesterday, I was with Upwardly Global at Accenture's office, and we had a guy who has a mechanical engineering degree as a Syrian refugee, and he's working at Best Buy as a customer service guy. But that global engineering village, outside of saying we should change the federal law, this guy is work authorized. He has got status to work. Their other 24 recommendations on their 25 list don't address his needs. And we have him, and he's willing to work. Similarly, I met a person with a master's degree in electrical engineering, which is a high demand part of the engineering field, with 30 years of experience. Also an Iraqi refugee. He's in the process he's got his refugee status, he doesn't have his green card status, and he's been having a hard time with employers that way who want him to get his green card status, even though he's work authorized. It sounds like there's a little bit of misconception about what he can work. And so absolutely we want to pool the talent pools and make these connections wherever we can.
I do officially think Steve and I have been working together too long, because right underneath where, as he was talking before he said anything, I wrote, we need to educate the employers. But it is something we actually say and have been saying for quite a while, is that, what Steve mentioned, it's difficult to put incentives to employers to hire foreign nationals. You don't want to exclude, and you want to be inclusive, not exclusive of any individual trying to look for a job. But there is that education component with employers in terms of demystifying the immigration process. How does it work? How can you go through the process? How can you hire foreign nationals? For employers that haven't yet delved into that area, it would be helpful for them to receive some education. And our office has recently been talking with East Lansing and about that issue in particular in terms of educating employers. And it's something we're looking at on a statewide perspective, as well as how can we maybe get together either some webinars or some seminars for employers to learn about the immigration process. And also with regard to the Go Employer program, even though it is through GTRI, which is the International Student Retention Arm, once an employer becomes has that Go Employer logo, it means they're open to international talent, period. So if a foreign national sees a posting with the Go Employer logo, or is at a job fair where they see the Go Employer logo, even if they're not a student, it just means that employer is open to international talent. So it could be a benefit for them.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Aida. I'm with Action of Greater Lansing, and I just want to thank everyone for being here. This is a wonderful conversation to have for our city of Lansing and our state of Michigan and our nation. So I'm very glad to be here with you guys today. I have let me see how I word this. I know of a family right now, a gentleman who would bought over $8 million to the state of Michigan, who is currently right now packing up his things and his family because they're being deported on the fact that, he was denied his work visa. And it's usually because they come over as J1, and it comes up for them later on. And it comes up on the fact because as international students are defined, they can only be here for a certain time to work. So I know many of these immigrants who come and bring so much to our state and are currently facing deportation. And I mean, his family's, his mother, his wife's a teacher, teaches technology. His daughters are teachers. So this is just something that I see the investment. This is brilliant that we're looking at them in this way, because they do bring so much to our city and our state and nationwide. So I guess my question is, I get that keeping them or retaining him here, retaining many of the immigrants here, but what are we doing as far as on the federal level to make sure that they get to, really invest in our nation and not have to deal with, the fear of deportation or the constant, there's so many things that I could share about his story. He's lost his home, he's paid over $50,000 to going through the immigration proceedings, so And I get all that, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So my question is just like, what, where is Michigan headed as far as the conversation federally on, what we're going to do to keep these international immigrants here? I hope I got that right.
Well, I think I heard you correctly. So one of the other things that the Michigan Office for New Americans is doing is looking at federal policy and potential suggested changes that the governor can suggest to the White House and to the federal government to make. In reality, right now, everyone, if you follow immigration reform at all, it's very much an up and down issue in terms of they're going to take it up, they're not going to take it up, they're going to take it up, they're not going to take it up. It's going to include some type of pathway to citizenship for undocumented. It's not going to. Immigration from a federal level right now, in terms of any type of comprehensive immigration reform, is very uncertain. With that in mind, the Michigan Office for New Americans, we still are looking at some ways we could potentially, make suggested changes going forward, even if comprehensive immigration reform doesn't go forward. But over and above that, the other thing we're doing is looking right now within the state to see what can we do within the state to try and minimize or eliminate barriers or perceived barriers with various state agencies, et cetera. Might not necessarily help the undocumented, but just in terms of the fact that immigration reform in and of itself may not be going anywhere this year, what are other ways that we can look to try and make Michigan a more welcoming state?
Very briefly, I just add that, as a former Democratic House leader, Governor Snyder deserves incredible praise. There's no current Republican office holder, because Bloomberg is now out of office, that I know of that has done as much to create the groundswell of support for moving forward what everybody agrees, every side of the issue, whether you're pro-enforcement, whether you want to create a pathway to citizenship, everybody agrees the current structure can be improved upon, but we're stuck in some nasty politics. I run a 501c3, so I don't actively work on this issue, but I think that our work has brought a number of new partners to the table in the economic development of business communities who want to see these rules and these laws changed.